Welcome to this episode of the Kimchi Kids. We are very excited to introduce today's guest, chef and owner of the legendary V restaurant in Western Springs, and his newest project, Gaijin, here in the West Loop. Also, the author of The Preservation Kitchen. Please welcome to our show, Chef Paul Virant.
Thank you, Andy. Thanks, gentlemen. Good to be here.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking time out. We always just like to kind of open up and just jump into your background a little bit. So if you wouldn't mind just kind of giving us a quick little, rundown of your where you're from.
Gotcha. How much time do I have?
6 hours.
Whatever you like, man. Yeah, we're here.
So, I grew up in St. Louis area. Grew up in a little town which is now called Wildwood, about a 45-minute drive or so west of the city, and basically kind of grew up in the country.
Oh wow.
My mother was from a small German town in Missouri called Freeburg. One of those like one horse towns. You walk, you drive by and you'll miss it kind of thing.
Yeah.
So she grew up there. She didn't have running water until I think she was in middle school.
Oh my God.
And then my dad grew up further. He grew up in St. Louis, and they got married. They met at SLU, and I think they wanted, they were kind of hippies, and they wanted to live kind of out in the country, so they were able to buy some land in Wildwood. They bought like 7 acres, and that's where we were raised. That's where we were raised. They had 5 kids. They still live in the house now. I think at one point we had maybe 100 acres.
Oh, wow.
I think maybe now it's more like 50 or 60. So we grew up with, they kind of went through everything. Like we had chickens for a bit. We had a couple pigs for a time.
I love that.
Which the deal is, right. If you're gonna eat the animals, you should name them, right? So we had
their names?
We had Wilbur, of course. That's an obvious pig name.
So dark.
And we and at one point we ate Wilbur.
Oh,
and my sister then was a vegetarian for a long time.
Oh, no.
For many years.
Was that hard on you as well? Like, how old were you?
No, I don't recall. No, I was young. But I don't recall being upset about that at all. Actually, which is
You didn't have much of a relationship with Wilbur.
No, maybe I was too young to sort of
Yeah.
have the relationship like she did, because she's. So there's 5 kids. I'm right in the middle. We're a couple years apart.
Okay.
But yeah, so grew up in St. Louis. Grew up kind of out in the country. Had was exposed to foraging for mushrooms as a kid, and morel mushrooms by the grocery bag we would find and sell. My grandparents on both sides loved to cook. My mom's parents were avid gardeners.
Okay.
And they did some canning and preserving and that kind of stuff. So, as much, I grew up in a Catholic family. So, and we were pretty Catholic, but we really, at the dinner table, we discussed like what we were eating, or what was next. What's the next meal?
Oh, really?
We didn't talk about politics or religion as much.
So food was a big
Food
part
was kind of the center of our lives.
That's cool.
So, and I think this. I'm sure this is the case for a lot of young cooks. I was kind of a knucklehead in high school. Didn't really have a full kind of direction or a path on what I wanted to do, but I loved food, and I started working. I started working at this place. It's still there. It's called the Smokehouse. Mm-hmm. It's in Chesterfield.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
It's been there. So it's been there since the 30s.
Jeez.
And they had to redo it completely in the summer of '92 when there was a massive flood in the Midwest.
Oh wow!
And the Mississippi River and the Missouri River flooded from way up north all the way down to Memphis and into the Gulf. So that's so they redid it, and they opened up a little restaurant there called Annie Gunn's. So if you guys are ever down in that area, but the smokehouse was a place that my dad's parents that lived in the city used to make a trip out, a half an hour drive out west on Sundays.
Oh, wow.
A little Sunday drive.
Yeah.
To pick up their meats and all their different, all the charcuterie and stuff that they would do, like the liverwurst, and they would buy rainbow trout from a hatchery down in the Ozarks, and they had these old wooden smokehouses, and they would smoke all their own food or smoke the fish there. And they make a jerky that is legendary.
Jeez.
Wow.
That if you slow cooked it, or even as a garnish, it'd be good in that shin black.
And wait, what is this place called? Annie?
Well, it's Annie Gunn's in the smokehouse.
Annie Gunn's in the Smokehouse. How far is St. Louis from here, from Chicago?
It's a 4.5 hour, yeah.
Okay, so that's a pretty
five
decent
hour.
drive. But
Anyway, so I know I'm probably talking more about that than I should, but I ended up so that the owner of the smokehouse was a character. Irish guy, and he introduced me to Simone and Jobert Andujar, who had a restaurant called Malmaison, which was a little further out in the country in this town of St. Albans that, now is really, everything's changed now. Like where I grew up, we would buy milk from a lady down the road, but all that's gone now.
Yeah.
It's nice that my folks have still held on to some land. Anyway, but so Tom introduced me to the owners of Malmaison, and I started working there in high school.
Oh, wow.
But it was kind of like, if you know St. Louis, if you know some of the restaurants, Tony's was always kind of the legendary Italian restaurant that's been there for decades, that opened up in the 50s.
Wow.
Malmaison was like considered to be, one of the nicest spots in the St. Louis area, and it was French.
Yeah, it sounds like fine dining in a rural area.
Yeah, they had, and again, they had a beautiful piece of property. Their restaurant was on some land, so they had gardens. They also had this like old smokehouse. I mean, so I was exposed to, I just feel like, that type of cooking, like the seasonal cooking, the preserving, all that stuff I was exposed to, as a kid growing up. But it was great to work for them. Simone was from Marseille, and Jobert was Basque.
Oh, wow.
Husband, wife, and then their son, he actually ran the restaurant, but he was a character. This guy was a character. Wow. He was, he had tattoos when only convicts and military had tattoos. He was one of the first.
Wow.
Now to be a chef, you need to get arm sleeves.
Right.
It's a rite of passage.
But yeah, is this like is this podcast? Is it G? Is it PG? Is it
MA?
Well, you can say fuck.
I check the explicit box.
Okay.
Every
Yeah,
time.
we're good. You can say fuck.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so
Blew the lid off that.
anyway, the chef, the chef that ran the kitchen, he was Norbert is his name, but Nobert is the French term for that.
Sounds better in
But
French.
he was born in the States, but he spoke French fluently, and he was a badass. Like, he was somebody that I really sort of idolized. I mean, he just the way he ran the kitchen. I mean, kind of the old style way, like.
Yeah.
I remember watching him grab, because all the servers would wear it was all black tie.
Yeah.
Right? We had the captains, front waiters, back waiters, essays, the whole system.
Yeah.
But I remember him grabbing a server, like he would run the broiler, which was the busiest. He was cooking all the expensive proteins.
Yeah.
Other than the saute guy, and he would expedite.
Jeez.
Yeah, I don't know how he did it. Like he was managing all his steaks and everything. And we were out in the country, so the line where he worked, there was a window right there. Uh-huh. And he was smoking weed all the time.
Yes.
During service. What? So here I was like, holy cow, like this guy, cooks his temps are spot on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's managing the kitchen. He's stoned.
This is great.
He'd be yelling at me about something that I wasn't doing right because I was a knucklehead. But I remember him grabbing one of the captains and up by the collar and brought his head like right up to the heat lamp.
Oh my God.
One of those like, "Do you ever do that again?" Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't do that anymore, Andy.
What year about was this?
This was last year.
Lots changed.
This was 80, 87, 88.
Yeah.
Just to move back here, so when you were a child growing up, I mean, just hearing that story about like your family and the cooking that's going on, is there an early memory that pops into your head as far as this was like one of those moments where I just kind of really started appreciating and fell in love with food a little bit, or was it no bear in the restaurant?
There was a lot of, so my both my mom and her mom are bakers. My mom got a sourdough starter from like a German friend, like in the early 70s. So we grew up eating that kind of stuff. So, my grandmother, her mom would make this walnut bread, which is, and I can't think of the name of it, but it's let me think about it. It's an Eastern European bread that they make a lot during Easter, but it's like, it's got tight rolls of like sugar, butter, and walnuts that are all rolled together. I have to look it up, but no, it's gonna drive me nuts now. But so like I remember that kind of stuff. But I do. It's funny working at Malmaison. We were, she taught me how to make a aioli, which wasn't a thing that we had as a kid. I mean, look now with the onset of a food processor, making a mayonnaise is pretty easy to do, right? And we, so I learned that there because they always did like a bouillabaisse and stuff like that. And that was one of those things that when I brought that home to my family that all enjoyed cooking and everything, we ate so much of that stuff that summer. It was like aioli all summer long.
Yes. Hell yeah.
But so I mean, other than, multiple, I think, moments of having something where I was like, wow,
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so work with these folks, and one of the captains was like, I don't know if you're familiar with the Culinary Institute of America in New York, but like, if you're really into this, you should you should consider going to culinary school. And I had never heard of it, right? So, I ended up doing culinary school, but I did I had an opportunity to go to undergraduate, so I went to West Virginia Wesleyan College. The only reason, which is embarrassing to say, is my high school girlfriend went to a school nearby,
Right.
and that's where I got into,
which
was close. So I went to West Virginia for college from St. Louis.
What was your major?
And I ended up I was business at first, and I didn't like it, and I wasn't doing well, and I ended up majoring in nutrition.
Okay.
Oh.
So got a little bit of the food science before.
Oh, cool.
And then I went to culinary school after college. But so in West Virginia, I worked in a restaurant there.
Okay.
And it was like, this chef was he had been trained in Pittsburgh because we were about 2.5 hours south of there. But he was really trying to like, there was a guy that grew mushrooms down the road, and that's that whole kind of like trying to find products, things that were native or from around the area. And that's where I got exposed to ramps too.
Oh, interesting.
West Virginia. I mean, they have, this town of Elkins, which was not far from where we went to school. They would every year have a ramp festival.
Wow.
Wow.
So, it's funny because in Chicago now, I mean, really even across the country, but like when I first came and was working in restaurants in Chicago, nobody was using ramps.
Oh, really?
Like ramps weren't a thing, even though they've always been a thing.
Yeah.
They've always growing around.
Yeah. Are they grown? Is there like a area of the country that ramps are only growing in, or like
They
are they everywhere? Like,
they're basically east of the Mississippi River,
oh, interesting.
as far south as Georgia, Tennessee, and then all the way up north. You know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then I think they do grow, but I don't know this. I think they do grow in the Northwest.
Oh, interesting.
I think.
Yeah, no, you're
But-
definitely right though. Like ramps are in Chicago.
They weren't around.
Yeah. But we grew up like so we in Korean it's called mountain garlic, sanmaner. Yeah, and we grew up eating that our whole lives.
Wow.
And I actually have some kimchi for you that I just picked. I'll give it to you after
That's
the show.
awesome.
Yeah. But
With ramps?
with ramps.
That's
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's I was shocked at how many people were unfamiliar with it, especially because it grows like crazy here.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
know.
So where would you get it at the local
No
Asian store? Or-
no, so our moms are obsessed with picking ramps.
Yeah, foraging is just like it's
No
just like
shit,
part
huh?
of life for them, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
Like
you know,
we'll go by, say like we go to a botanic garden and like it's all there, but my mom will know every single vegetable like leaf. She's like, oh, that's a squash leaf or that's a whatever.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't understand, but
That's cool.
And anytime we're driving by like the highway, she'll be like, oh, that's a fiddlehead fern. Can you just pull over?
Wow.
Like, no, mom.
and you guys are both from here.
Yeah.
From Chicago.
yeah. I mean, I was born in Seoul, but I came here.
You were
7
born
months
in
old.
Korea?
Yeah. But,
Gotcha.
But I've been here, Chicago, my
Your
whole
whole
life. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Andy, were you born
Yeah, I was
in Korea?
born here in Chicago.
In Chicago.
Yeah. Been here,
And you
moved around a lot.
speak the language? Korean?
We do. Yeah. I say we do. It's like elementary, but we speak.
Yeah, I say I speak at like a 4th grade level. So like I can
I'll take it.
Yeah, you know, I can tell you I'm hungry and tired.
I have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah,
that
things
kind
like
of
that,
stuff.
yeah.
Basic stuff.
But like any
We
sort
can
of
get
interesting.
around in the homeland, I'm sure.
yeah. No, for sure. I've been to Korea once a couple years back and I had no issues getting through the country, but I couldn't have like this conversation with you.
Right.
Yeah.
Got it.
So after culinary
So
school,
yeah, culinary school. And I worked in restaurants up in Hudson Valley area.
Okay.
Worked at a winery. You know, there's a lot of
cool.
wineries and orchards up in the Hudson Valley. And that was a cool experience. And I actually wanted to work. It was the place was called Cascade Mountain Winery, Cascade Mountain Winery in Amenia, New York. So not far from the Connecticut border on the east side of the state. I wanted to work in the vineyards.
Oh, interesting.
Kind of learn that whole thing. But I was not good at it, you know. So that didn't last long, and they were like, you know, we have a restaurant, you know, maybe you should just stay in that lane, you know. So
I love that.
but you know that was right around, like that was the onset of Coach Farm had just started in Pine Plains, New York, which is just about a half an hour north of there. So there was a lot of talk about like Hudson Valley regional food, Hudson River Club, which was a restaurant that Waldy Maloof had in the Twin Towers. That focused on, you know, shad from the Hudson River, like all the products from around that area. And the guy that I worked for at the winery, who was a character, also had tattoos before
Before
they
it
were
was cool.
yeah. Who prior to cooking was a hitman in Philly.
What?
Yeah, this guy was
This-
Rich Reeves was his name.
Are you supposed to be telling?
Rich Reeves.
He just got exposed. How did you find that out? This guy.
Everybody knew about it.
Oh.
You knew it was the deal.
I love that.
Wow. What kind of hitman?
Shout out to Rich Reeves.
I don't know.
There's only one.
He didn't go. He didn't go into details. No, like you could
was such
work
a-
for the government.
That's true.
Yeah, I think
you
he
can
was-
work for
yeah.
the mafia.
There's mafioso.
Italian, Jewish,
Yeah.
Irish.
Right.
So many different types of
Right.
mafias you could work for.
This
Yeah,
is
I think
true.
he was like a leg breaker
Yeah.
type guy. You know, that kind of stuff.
Good to have on your team.
Yeah, no, he was a character,
Yeah.
as you can imagine. But super talented and very passionate about ingredients and where we were getting our food.
That's cool.
I love that.
Also, he'll kill
The
you.
restaurant industry.
Are these fresh?
Chuck, it's the restaurant industry, right? Characters. But just great, entertaining, but great experiences along the way, right? Working with talented people, and just the reoccurring theme really was best ingredients, and seasonal cooking, and the foraging thing, which is fun to hear about something that you guys were really kind of exposed to that. That was into all that stuff. It was fun.
Yeah.
And then I worked. We would do stages and stuff at restaurants in New York all the time, and ultimately when I graduated, I ended up working with Wayne Nish, who had a restaurant called March on the Upper East Side of New York, it felt like the right place for me because honestly, prior to moving to Jersey City, because that's where I lived, and then I would commute into Manhattan. Kind of, in the country in Missouri, West Virginia,
right,
upstate New York, Hudson Valley is pretty. It's pretty.
Country.
Rural.
Yeah.
I needed to find a kitchen like March. It was a small kitchen. It was a small restaurant. It was Wayne. We had a sous chef, Charlie, who was a knucklehead. And this guy Hillary Gregg, who was from the island of St. Vincent, who worked at the quilted giraffe with Wayne Nish, which was kind of a, you might not know the restaurant, but you look it up. But it was kind of it was a legendary place in New York.
Oh, cool.
And a lot of really talented chefs all worked there that maybe then ultimately had their own place, right? Cool. But Hillary was like one of those, he was like he was like the zen of cooking proteins but it was a small crew. Like when I look at that compared to, when I did stages at, from Park Avenue Cafe to Le Bernardin to Boulet to all those different restaurants, it was like very intimidating and kind of overwhelming for me at that time, because I had been working in restaurants, but it's a whole different scene in New York, and it's funny because when I did a stage at Lutece, the restaurant on Andre Soltner's old place, the chef, this guy Eberhard Mueller, who I forget what he ended up doing, but he ran that spot for a while. But when and this is one of those, like, you got to go by the restaurant at a appropriate time when hopefully if it's a dinner only restaurant, when's the door open? How do you get in there, right? I mean, you can call, but it was always hard to get somebody on the phone. So the best was to kind of stop by with a resume. Hey, I'm looking for work, that kind of thing. And so this guy, he had me come in and I did a stage, and then I sat down with him, and he's got these like he's got like a real kind of stern look. Yeah. He's got glasses on. He's like one of those. He's kind of looking at me from above his glasses, looking at my resume, and he's like, "You haven't worked anywhere."
Yes.
Like Missouri, West Virginia. He's like, he's like, let's understand something here, that your career just started.
I love that.
In New York,
That's so cool.
And the only opportunity that they had was in pastry, but there was no way I was working for that guy. Oh. Like I walked out, I'm like, holy shit, I'm so scared of that guy. Right?
No, for sure. It is intimidating.
Right.
Also, the whole staging thing, it's just like it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
As far as like, because even when I started, like, after I started, like, I would go and just volunteer my time to learn, right? And just to see what's going on in different kitchens. But These days, these guys are coming in and it's like, yeah, if you're not going to pay me over $20 an hour, then let's not even waste our time. I'm like, you don't, like, that's not how you start this conversation, dude. But new age of
It's true.
You get the same thing with musicians.
Yeah.
It's across the board.
That's crazy.
I'm sure, right?
I mean, I just like
It's
heard
just
love.
like, when do I get paid? I'm like, when is your fucking song going to be mixed properly?
I just loved hearing that story about the old days of like going to a place and like waiting and looking for somebody with a resume in your hand and very different days now with email and
Yeah. Yep.
I love it.
Oh yeah.
just the ease.
I remember doing that at like these like L2O back in the day or whatever, or Charlie Trotters, and they would always not remember that I was supposed to be there that day. They're like, "Oh yeah, come on in." And
You're like, thanks for making me feel really good about this
exactly
experience.
And then they just put me on the dish pit for like 6 hours at the end of the night.
How long did you cook in New
Yeah,
York?
it definitely builds character. Yeah. A couple years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you like it out there? I mean, was it?
I did. I mean, I loved the restaurant. Wayne's mother was Japanese and his father was from Malta. So we had it was really, he did some interesting stuff.
Oh, okay.
And I had, because of where I lived, and he took me the first couple times into Chinatown.
Yeah.
To do all the shopping because he used a lot of stuff from down there, but you had to go and get it, right? So then that was ultimately what I would do. Because I was living in Jersey, so I just take the train over into the Twin Towers and then up to Chinatown and do all the shopping for March. So that was a really cool opportunity
For sure.
to learn about all the different Asian greens and the young ginger that we would get, that he would want to use and. So there was, March was, it ended up not, it didn't make it. It sort of reconcepted after 9/11, but it was a great restaurant.
Yeah.
But the food, there was definitely Japanese influence.
Okay.
In the food, it was definitely like, interesting to see. Cultures that are so different, right? It's the Mediterranean, Japanese food, and how's that gonna work out,
That's
right?
interesting, yeah.
But we would do cool, broth based sort of fish entrees, right? Yeah. That had different. Maybe it's got prawns, it's got some fish, but there'd be dashi and there'd be soy sauce and. Different mushrooms and how they kind of built it was cool.
That's awesome.
What was the concept of the restaurant?
I mean, it was American. It was contemporary American food. I mean, which is I know that's kind of a term that. I mean, people use a lot. I've often thought about the kind of food that we did early on at V. That would be how I would describe it. We did a lot of. I mean, he bought from a lot of local farmers, like Four Story Hill Farm in Pennsylvania and Jameson lamb. That was my first experience with whole animals. We'd get whole lambs and stuff in. I remember it was such a small restaurant. I remember when, And I think this does happen here, but when there's a health inspection in New York, right down the street, I mean they'd call the restaurant,
Next door.
Yeah, hey, they're coming.
Oh, that's so cool.
Get ready. But we're you're in the tiny walk-in trying to wrestle with this whole lamb that's hanging over the.
Oh man!
Hanging over the butter, right?
Just walk down the street
raw
with it?
meat hanging over
Just dripping into.
Yes. Well, it wasn't dripping, but
Yeah.
I mean, it was wrapped. I mean, it wasn't. But
Just wipe it off.
Yeah.
I will say this. I mean, other than the the few little catering gigs I did in Jersey when I was in culinary school, because there was always weekend opportunities, and I've been very lucky. I've never really worked in a dirty kitchen.
Oh.
you know.
Yeah.
But like some of those catering gigs that you did,
Yeah.
you know, it's just like, ooh, wow,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
nobody cares here,
Yeah.
right?
No,
So
for sure.
either way, anyway, but it was cool. It was, but I like New York. I liked, you know, I think that's where I really got exposed to Asian food
Okay.
because I hadn't eaten a lot of it
Yeah.
prior to then, and I really loved the, you know, the balance that you get with all the different relishes and the pickles and the fermented things, and
Oh yeah.
you know whether it's Korean food or Japanese food or Indian food, the
Right.
chutneys, and
Yeah.
but I loved the combination of those things and how it balanced out
Yeah.
with rich, whether it's you know proteins or you know, which was it ended up kind of being the foundation of what we did at V.
I love that.
You know, so
Yeah.
I mean that all came from I think my time there in New York.
Yeah.
So
What brought you back to Chicago?
so I left New York and moved back to St. Louis. So I was
interesting.
the plan was to go back to St. Louis, and you know that was my hometown, and I did some stages and restaurants in St. Louis, and really was planning on moving back there. And it just, you know, there's a lot more stuff obviously going on there now.
Yeah.
But, you know, at the time, in the mid '90s, there wasn't much happening in St. Louis. I mean, you know, there was Tony's. I mean, there were some good restaurants. Malmaison had been closed for a few years. So my younger brother was going to medical school up here. So he was moving up here, and I'm like, you know, maybe I should move up here. I mean, you know, obviously there was a reputation between Trotters and the Everest Room and Le Francais and Ambria. Like there were great, or I think Trio was open. I think they were pretty new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I did, you know, and I came up and I did stages. I guess I did Everest Room, Charlie Trotters, and I mean, Le Francais, you know, I liked the idea of maybe working there, but it was just so far out of the city, right? Up in Wheeling.
Okay.
You know, as a single guy, you know, like you're trying to,
Yeah.
you know, you want to be in the city, right,
Yeah.
Andy?
Of course.
You know?
I do. I
So,
do love being in the city.
But yeah, I guess Trio, Everest, and Trotters, and I ended up working at Trotters.
Okay.
You know, big process. Getting the job was a process. It was, you know, flying up. You do the stage, and then, you know, back in St. Louis, trying to, you know, like I think that night after the stage, I didn't have a chance to talk to Charlie.
Oh, wow.
He was, you know, he was a busy guy.
Yeah.
So constant phone calls, like trying to get back in touch with him. And then eventually I spoke with somebody, I'm not even sure it was him, but they said, you know, you can come up and do a tasting for the chef.
Oh, interesting.
So I'm like, okay, so fly back up, you know, fly back up. It did the tasting and was really, you know, felt really good about the tasting. You know, it's a mystery basket tasting. You know, you're doing
This was for a line cook position?
yeah.
Holy
Can you
shit.
do you recall what was in your basket, like roughly?
I can tell you a couple. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, that's not a memory you forget, right?
Yeah. I was gonna say this is.
Yeah, it was a you know, like I think it was 2 hours. Maybe it was longer than 2 hours, because it doesn't seem like a lot of time. But it was like I think 3 or 4 courses, and then he had so Guillermo was his chef, Guillermo Tellez, who's now been in Cabo for a long time, you know, because they opened up that restaurant in Cabo. And then now he's at a place called Flora Farms, which is a cool place in Cabo, San Jose. Anyway, Guillermo, and he was a Chicago guy. He went to Kendall, but he was the head chef there. Like he was basically the guy that wrote the seafood book. You know, they come out, they bring the sheet pan of proteins, and there was like blue nose snapper, soft shell crabs,
Wow.
a saddle of venison,
Yeah.
and a couple whole squab.
That's crazy.
And it's like, have at it.
Yeah. It's
Which is interesting.
this is like a crazy interview
I would
process.
get
They're
them,
looking
like,
for
spam.
feedback?
That's a lot of money, first of all. I'm
Which
like,
is-
you're
which
gonna
is-
waste it on this interview.
Well, they were. So I wasn't applying. I was actually. I mean, I guess I didn't know at the time what I was applying for, but I was applying for a tournant job.
Okay.
So to cover all the stations. So
Well, maybe for listeners to explain that, because like Tournant is, maybe you can kind
Maybe
of-
for me too.
yeah,
it's kind of. I mean, as far as the hierarchy goes in the kitchen, it'd be probably the next in line to being a part of management or
It's like the lead line cook
you're because you're covering.
every station.
Chuck, when you're off and you're not working grill that night, I'm working your station.
yeah.
That kind of thing. So interestingly enough, when I worked at March, and I think this had to have been part of it. You know, when I worked at March, Charlie Trotter came into March.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
very cool.
And ultimately, because his vegetable book came out when I was working there, or had just come out, and one of the days off he was doing a ton of demos and different things, and I went with him up to the North Shore to do a demo
Oh, cool.
with his book, and on the drive up there, he said, he's like, last time I was in New York, we went to March, and that was the best meal we had in New
Oh,
York.
very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not that I had anything to do with it. I mean, I just was one of the cooks there.
Yeah,
but
you were cooking for him, man.
but I think so. I mean, maybe that was part of maybe. I mean, I guess you look back on it. I mean, unfortunately, my time there was not long.
Yeah.
But maybe he was he was hoping for kind of bigger plans for me there. So that's why maybe he had to do the full on tasting
How long were you at Trotters?
for a growing season.
Yeah.
Andy. So just start May,
is that a
May to
metaphor?
September. What's that? Not long.
What was your takeaway from working there at a place like that? Because it's so different from where you're just coming from in New York.
Yeah, you look back on everybody's you have regrets in life, and I regret not having stayed there maybe longer, right? But it was tough, and it was there was definitely like sort of an initiation phase, sort of like a hazing
For sure.
hazing phase, and since then Guillermo and I have made up because I've seen him over the years at events and this and that.
Oh,
But
man.
but we he was, I mean, now his wife, right, who also helps him run the place down in Mexico. Leslie was one of the line cooks, but those two were dating. They were dating, and then I'm the new tournant, like
Yeah.
covering the stations, and Leslie did not like me.
Oh man.
I feel like I'm a pretty likable guy.
Yeah.
I never said, I never like, hey,
Yeah.
nice grill marks, or I never,
Yeah.
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 And I don't think she liked me. So, obviously that got back to him, and they made my life miserable.
Fuck. Yeah.
So ultimately it was a lot of, we were, most of my time there was doing, was setting up the amuse and the canapes with all the stages and the interns.
Wow.
Because we had the two different menus. You had the regular tasting and the vegetarian menu, and then each customer got 4 to 5 canapes.
Yeah.
So, and this was, like at that time in Chicago. So this is in '96, that summer.
Jeez.
They were busy.
Yeah.
They were busy.
It's like the height of.
I mean, it
all
was
of
like
it.
Tuesday, or I guess we were closed on Mondays I forget what days we were closed. I think Sunday and Monday were closed. But either way, we were doing full covers every night.
Yeah, that's nuts.
They were sold out every night. And so you were doing the amuse, and we were never, like, my team was never ready to go. So it was always a shit show every day, and it was a struggle.
Yeah.
And Guillermo, because they had this policy that, and I think it was 2:00, which seems crazy, but it was something like the back kitchen door was locked. There was an in time. Like, so we'll call it. We'll say 1:00 was the time. Okay. And that's when, so all the cooks would be outside. You couldn't come in any earlier.
Yeah.
And then they'd open the door, and it was just a flipping scramble.
Oh, what? I don't even understand that. But
Sounds like Top Chef.
Why wouldn't they let you come in earlier?
Well, because the theory was if you came in earlier, then you would work slower, right? You would.
oh my
kinda,
God.
Kind of ease in your day,
Yeah. He wants you on.
take time, do whatever. You tornado some squashes at your leisure.
I gotta ask. Did you watch the documentary? Have you seen it?
I have not. I need to, huh?
I would love to hear your perspective after you watch that. Yeah.
I haven't seen it either.
So I told Guillermo, because every day, like him and the sous chef, who actually this guy Mike Lutz, I think was his name, who was younger than I was, which that doesn't mean anything, but he was a punk, and we didn't get along, and not, again, not that I'm not, I feel like I'm a reasonable person.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is unreasonable. Like, I got these people that are working with me, they're not very good. We have 140 on the book, so we got to prep all this amuse stuff, and then I need 140 times 4 pieces of these canapes. So we were doing things like deviled quail eggs and stuff like that. It's like, it was a nightmare trying to get all that stuff done. So I was like, I need to come in earlier. Like the 1:30 thing or the 1:00, that's not working for me. I need to be here. I'll prove to you that I can do that we'll get it done. And sure enough, so I'd come in at 10, and then they just loaded me down with stuff. I was doing shit for staff meal, like stupid stuff.
Yeah.
Like I'll never forget the day, and I almost left right there when they gave me a box of Carrot Tops. Mm-hmm. They're like, can you put something together for staff?
What?
Carrot Tops.
Yeah.
Jesus.
And I was like, "Are you serious?" And they're like, and it was all like, "Yeah," and I'm like, but it was getting close. Man. So so I lasted as long as I did, and then I left.
Jeez.
One day I got fed up.
Yeah.
But I do have a quick funny story about the leaving.
Yeah.
This is pretty funny. So I left, or I gave notice, and it was one of those like, I'm done. I'm not fucking working anymore. Like, I'm giving you my 2 weeks right fucking now.
Yeah.
Right? Because I was hot with those guys, both Guillermo and Mike. I wanted to,
Yeah.
I wanted to get into it with them.
Yeah.
Oh God, I was not feeling those guys at all. And so I was like, I'm done. 2 weeks, right? And then Charlie didn't say anything to me for the 2 weeks, and then the night,
Jesus.
and then the night before I left, he pulled me aside, and he definitely, like, he was focused in service, but towards the end of the night, having some wine, whatever, like he had a little buzz on when I was talking to him. That's fine. And he's like, I think you're making a big mistake. I'd like you to reconsider, so one of my regrets is saying, you know what, I would, but your chef's an asshole, and I'm going to kill your sous chef. so
that hitman.
and he probably would have said,
Reeves.
those were his guys. So he probably said, like, well, then that's not going to work out.
Right, exactly.
But at least be straight with him.
Yeah.
And I did, and he's like, what are you going to do? He's like, he's like, this is the only restaurant to work at in Chicago.
Yeah.
Where are you going to go? Where are you going to work? And I was kind of thinking about it because I was so disenchanted from the job. I was kind of beat down, which I didn't end up doing, obviously. But I was like, I'm joining the Peace Corps.
Wow.
And I had been thinking about that.
Yeah.
Obviously I didn't end up doing it. But,
Yeah.
And so flash forward a couple years later, I was the chef at a place in Wrigleyville, and we were doing the canapes and hors d'oeuvres or something for the James Beard Awards in New York, and we were coming back from New York, and we were at LaGuardia waiting. You know, I'm waiting for the plane, right? You know, getting on the plane, heading back home, and there was a line. You know, people were boarding. And you know how you get that feeling like something's not right or somebody's behind you, you know, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I had that feeling, and I turned around. Charlie Trotter is standing right behind me.
What the fuck?
I almost shit my pants. I was like, holy shit, you know. And I had worked. I mean, I had worked at Umbria after you know I didn't go to the Peace Corps.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And he knew that, and I turned around. And I was like, you know, chef, you know, I'm kind of stuttering, like, you know.
Yeah.
And he's like, "How was the Peace Corps?" It was crazy.
Yes.
And I'm just like, I never, you know. He's like, and he's just kind of just looking at me like no expression, you know.
Oh man.
And I was like, I end up, you know, working at Umbria, you know, and I'm just like, you know, I turn back around. I'm just like, get this line moving.
So you guys just stood in line awkwardly, silently together?
Yeah, that's one of those things. Yeah, I don't remember, but yeah, it was 5 minutes, but it felt like 3 hours, right?
I wonder how.
Anyway,
many
but I
times-
regret not being straight with him.
Yeah.
I tell people that all the time, like young cooks, like be honest, right?
Yeah.
What's going on? Right?
I was gonna say, like, I wonder how many times, how many other like versions of you have gone through there and didn't say something to Charlie, right? I mean, like, how many people like are like
He lost because of fucking Guillermo.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, I watched listen, I think the documentary is very
I need to watch it.
It's
Yeah.
very revealing of who he was and how passionate he was, but to what extent and lengths he would go, you know, to do what he wanted to do, you know. I question sometimes, right? It's like, especially hearing this kind of perspective
Right.
Behind, you know, the scenes and behind the curtains. I wonder how many times people wanted to say something to Charlie about maybe like, hey, these guys, you know, that you've got running the show, man. It's tough, right? And
Yeah.
Or did Charlie know, right? And he's just
Right.
like, great job, guys, keep it going. You know, who knows, right?
Right.
It's like,
It's all mental abuse,
Right.
right? And I know nothing physical,
right,
you know. It's not like some of those stories you hear about.
yeah, like burning people and
People
shit.
holding
Yeah,
you
like
under the heat lamp.
Marco Pure White, you
Yeah.
know, throwing like the story where
Like he threw like
Vitali was working for him at some place in London, and he dumped the whole thing of salt in the hollandaise.
Oh, what?
Yeah, it was in some book. Yeah, like because he was brutal.
it was
But Vitali was just like, "Fuck this guy," and he just unloaded a box of salt in the hollandaise.
Oh,
And then I think he threw it at, you know.
yeah. I think he threw it was like risotto that was like not cooked perfectly. And then he threw it on Batali, and then he walked out and put the salt in the sauce.
And listen, I will say this, like, I haven't been perfect.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
I
none
mean,
of
I
us
did
are, you
I
know.
did come from that school, so
Yeah.
to some extent, you know, I've had a couple moments. You know, I threw our first New Year's Eve service at V was terrible. And the one of the pastry cooks was like, you know, after service, he's like, "Oh, you know, like, well, that could have gone better," or like something like that. And I took a 18-inch plastic wrap that I had. It was the closest thing to me. I took it and I threw it at him.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't hit him, which
Yeah.
is good
Right.
because that could do some
So, yeah,
damage. Right?
that's heavy.
It's like a 12-pound.
Yeah,
But I
block.
broke a bunch of plates, and you know. So I mean, I've had my moments. I'm not proud of that stuff,
Yeah.
but it
We
happens.
all it's the business. It's trying in this, you know, and I don't think people understand how intense and stressful it can be working in our industry at
Right.
times, you know, and
Right.
especially when, you know, you got people that really, really fucking care and like they're putting everything that they've got into this, right? And then to see somebody, I guess, like just not give a fuck, it can it can rile you up,
Trigger.
you know.
Yeah.
Yep.
But you know, we've had conversation with Joe Froman, and he's had nothing but incredible things to say about his time
Joe?
working with you. Yeah,
That's funny.
yeah.
Joe's a good guy, talented chef, super talented. But yeah, he was you know, I mean, he was not, you know, he was not a problem. Like
Yeah.
right, like it's
Right.
it's the people that that's where it can be frustrating, right? When you're trying to do like, because he was part of the original crew at Perennial when we opened, and you know, you knew you could rely on him. So you're not, I'm not yelling at him about stuff, right? So. Not that I wouldn't have liked to have yelled at him about something, right? He did help even years before that. The first Outstanding in the Field that I did, one of his chef instructors, this guy that I know, Mike Howe, who taught Joe and some other guys. I'm like, it was a Saturday night. I couldn't afford staff from V to go cook at Kinnickinnick Farms, in Caledonia, Illinois. Mm-hmm. So my friend Mike got a bunch of guys, and Joe was one of them. Mm. So when he was in school.
That's cool.
Hey, do me a favor. Can we stop for a second?
Yeah.
Do you mind?
Yeah.
Just because I have some new bar equipment being installed, and my plumber called.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I just want to make sure it's okay.
No, we're good. Yeah.
Is that all right?
We
be
edit
quick.
this thing
100%.
Okay.
Fine.
All right. I know it was on a good
We're
good
on a
roll.
roll, chef.
Yeah. Let me find out what Tony's doing. All right. Let's see. Okay. Tony. Oh, wait. Oh, no, wait. Nope. All set on that.
A quick word from our sponsors.
All set on that.
What's the plastic wrap?
Okay.
This episode is sponsored by Kirkland Signature Film Wrap.
I hope this is going like you
No,
want
no,
to.
dude,
'Cause I'm having a lot of fun.
Yeah, this is great. This is great.
Angelina, you having fun over there?
I am.
Hey,
See that,
Tony, what's going on? How's it going?
I have a pit bull. But it's huge. And I feel like the family is a little bit like, I know it's not.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
The two evils.
Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah. Cold water's fine. Yep.
White-headed.
All right. Cool. Thanks, Tony. All right. Bye. All right. Maybe I'll pee real quick.
Yeah.
All right. All good. We got at my bar at Vistro Prime, which you didn't mention that in the intro, which is fine because I have a restaurant in Hinsdale.
Oh, okay.
It was Vistro, and I reconcepted it to Vistro Prime
Okay.
Steakhouse in Hinsdale.
Awesome.
And it's going really well. But
That's good.
We're reconfiguring the bar, and we're putting one of those rinsers.
Yeah.
So I'm super.
Is it a
pumped.
headache or okay?
No, he
I've
asked.
been dying for one of those.
He asked about does it need to be hooked up to hot water? It's like,
Okay.
just cold water. Cold water is good.
Let's write that down for the intro. Let's write that down.
V Prime.
Vistro Prime. We'll look it up. See, I think that's why, like, some of them, they do care about that, like, how we introduce them here, So I think what I'll do in the future is, like, when I do the whole, like, oh, so this is how it works, we're going to run now. I'm going to let them know in the beginning, be like, just so you're aware, we do a nice, long introduction to the show, like,
Like,
post,
outside
post,
of it.
yeah, post,
Oh,
art,
okay.
and just be like, so you know that, like, when we do this, like, this is just us getting going here, like, don't, because, even just, like, right now, like, it's like an hour into it, and he's like, yeah, you didn't mention the other restaurant I got, and it's like, it's been on his mind,
I don't.
to some degree.
Like he literally just got a call from the plumber
Yeah.
for the bar. I think he was just like, oh, by the way, you didn't mention it.
His phone was half in the back right now. Should get that. Maybe turn it off.
Was that his phone the whole time?
Yeah. That's what I kept thinking of.
See that dirty look I gave you?
You thought it was me.
Oh, because you looked down.
Because I was like,
I was the first big loss break, but this is on the.
Then I thought it was Angelo, and I was like,
And also, I thought it looked like the same.
Me?
I thought it was the tiny desk.
Oh, you would have heard Tiny Desk.
Red on clear case.
Oh, yeah.
Tiny Desk, this is like,
Yeah. Her friend, by the way, when we went, he was like, he donated us like a little kitchen island,
Oh, nice.
and he was like trying to get rid of everything. It's like, oh, you want this too? Like he was like in that mode,
Oh, totally.
And he was like, oh, by the way, he's like, I saw Angeline's little tiny desk. I have a tiny stand that you can have for it. And you know what it was? It was like a sheet music stand.
Oh.
But he was like, first of all, he wasn't even joking. He was like, I have a tiny stand to match your tiny desk. Would you like it? I was like, no, we're good.
Dude, take it.
I'm like, for what it's worth.
I'm always sure.
I know. I was like thinking about. I was like, fuck. I'm like, you know what?
Always using that.
Chuck might have needed that. Like, it's like it was a nice. It was really nice. Like for sheet music stand. Like I'm like recalling, like middle school, like being in like the music classrooms, and like those are shitty. Yeah.
Hey Chuck, what's the deal with that small banjo out there? That's the little banjo.
The little tiny one that you got.
the
The
little
old
tiny
one.
banjo.
Oh, the one that said
Yeah.
up there. So that I bought that at a flea market in Paris, and it's called the banjole. And it's a mandolin banjo.
Got it.
Combination.
I need to take a picture of that before I leave because my buddy plays the banjo. He's in a bluegrass band out in Colorado. So and I know he'd be interested in.
Yeah, I
Seeing
sit
it.
on it. I want to take it to someone to have it like set up and do a new saddle and that sort of thing. 'Cause it's a pretty cool instrument. It seems like it's at least 100 years old.
Wow,
Flea market in
Where do
Paris,
you want to
coolest
jump
flea market in
on
the
right
world.
now? Just pick
that's
some-
pretty
pick
cool.
something and go jump
It was
to
like
it.
Yeah, we'll start with.
cannons from the 1800s.
Yeah.
How did V happen? Let's go.
Yeah, let's do it.
Shampoo. Maxwell Street Market.
Because we're close.
Oh, I see how this
Okay.
works. What was I doing there? There you go. All right.
Yeah, you're
back
good.
On. Yep.
You're good.
Back on. Thank you.
And we're back. This is how I'm gonna find the edit.
Awesome.
Nice. Please don't do that to mics, Chuck.
It's okay.
All right. So can you tell us how V happened?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I feel like we missed a few years, but that's fine. We'll just get there, you know?
What happened?
can-
What
we
happened
can
in
rewind.
between?
Well, so I worked like after Trotters, I got, you know, which was great because I lived in Lincoln Park and I got a saucier job at Umbria, which was super cool. And I worked there for a couple of years and I started dating my now wife at that time.
Was she front of house or?
No, she was in medical school.
Oh.
Yeah. So, actually, when I think one of our first dates, I was at Charlie Trotter's, and you know, it was our first date, so I didn't bitch about my job, right?
You were eating there.
No, just out on a date. And she's like, "Oh my god, you work at Charlie Trotter's!" Like, it was an impressive place to work.
Right.
People knew it. And then I think maybe the second date was like, "Yeah, I'm no longer working at Charlie Trotter's."
Now that you got it.
I'm without a job. But so I got a job at Umbria, which was great. And then we got married in '98 and we moved to Hawaii for 1 year. Oahu. She did first year of residency in
Oh, okay.
at she was in OB-GYN at Kapiolani Women's Hospital, Women and Children's Hospital in Honolulu.
Yeah, what were you doing out there?
So I ended up hooking up. I hooked up with Philippe and Pierre Padovani, who were opening up a restaurant in the DoubleTree Hotel right in Waikiki. And they were. I mean, it was cool. It was a cool experience. You know, I was hired. I was one of two sous chefs hired. The other guy, Eldon, who still cooks in Hawaii, who I referred to as Dolomite. He was a cool cat.
Dolomite.
So him and I were the sous chefs, and then Philippe's brother Pierre was coming from France. He didn't have his papers organized, but he was going to do the pastry side of things, and they were going to do, you know, fresh breads, all this different stuff. You know, they had a Bongard oven that we were getting, and then with Hawaiian chocolate, they were going to do a whole line of truffles and candies and that kind of stuff. So Pierre, so he had to come out. So he came out for 2 weeks, right, and had to train us to get ready to open up the restaurant.
Wow.
And I had done some pastry, and I always was kind of interested in it. And he's like, you know, they were like, would you work with Pierre? Can you be our kind of pastry sous chef? You know.
Yeah.
So that's what I did for the year.
No shit.
And it was a cool experience because I got into chocolate and bread making and all that. And actually, the bread, our house bread that we serve at V, still today, is the recipe that we use there.
That's so cool.
Which is interesting. Quick side story. They had all these recipes with their letterhead on the top of the recipe. It was like Padovani's recipes, right? These guys. But all their recipes, not all their recipes, but I discovered years later that the bread recipes were all from the Lenote school in Paris. It's right out of the fucking textbook. It's not like it's like it wasn't their recipes. It was from when they went to cooking school, right?
Yeah, that's so good.
Anyway, so we did that. We just did that for a year, and then my wife ended up, not liking OB-GYN, so we moved back here.
Okay.
And she finished her residency in internal medicine at Cook County in Rush. And I reach out to Gabino at Umbria because I really enjoyed working with Umbria at Umbria. They didn't have anything going on, but him and Joho are good buddies.
Okay.
So I am getting hired as the executive sous chef at the Everest Room.
Yeah.
Because they were just opening the Eiffel Tower in Vegas.
Wow.
So I did Everest, and then I did
The Eiffel Tower. Sorry, that's Joho's.
that's his place.
Oh my god, I didn't realize that.
yeah.
Did you know this?
You know, it was funny. I remember when I was like 19 years old working at Let Us Entertain You, and they're like, your discounts work at any restaurant except Everest and Eiffel Tower. That was like, they were like, you can't get a discount at those two places.
That's funny.
I'm like, don't worry about it. I'm not going to Vegas.
Good for Joho.
19
That's
years
funny,
old.
but working with Joho and Thierry was awesome because they they're both from Alsace, from France, and there's definitely there's always been a ton of Alsatian influence. I mean, I'm French, Slovenian, German, and Irish, but the French side of my family comes from that area in France, from Alsace.
From Alsace. Very cool.
I mean, years ago, from the 1800s. But so did Everest, and then ended up taking which was another kind of regret because I had a good gig. Chef Thierry basically said to me, I mean, when I left Everest, he was kind of like I was his ticket out of Everest. Like I could have potentially run that kitchen. And I kind of regret not doing that. I really was kind of ready to do my own thing. I mean, Everest was a great restaurant, but you didn't change stuff that often. It's so funny now when I circle back at my career, and it's like young chefs, everybody I want to change stuff, do new stuff. Like that's not always the easiest and not always the smartest, right?
It's not.
People, customers, they want to sometimes they want to be able to come back and get the same thing.
100%.
But I was in that mindset of like, I want to create my own stuff and do my own thing. So I ended up working at this place called the Outpost in Wrigleyville. So I left a great restaurant and went to, I mean, it was kind of a stepping ground for like Kevin Shikami worked there. I mean, there were a handful. I mean, these are some guys that have all moved on, like Ted Sisma, who had a restaurant right next to Blackbird for a few years. But so it was kind of a stepping or a launching pad, if you will, for young chefs. But it didn't work out as well as I would have liked, and I ended up leaving. We ended up having our first kid, and I started working with Paul Kahn at Blackbird.
Okay.
So, and I did that until I opened V.
Oh, wow.
Were you CDC
great.
over there?
I was not. No, I was kind of a gun for hire, if you will, Andy. I did whatever they needed. I was kind of part-time. My wife was out of residency at that time. So she was working full-time in Downers Grove. Okay. So now you see where this is all going.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? In Downers Grove, we were living in the Ukrainian village area. And so I was part-time. I'd cover kind of a torn out, cooked, I did private events with them. I just noticed they're doing this artist series. I think they're doing it at a VEC. But they used to do these salon series out of Blackbird, which was really cool. They'd bring in a local artist, and then we would develop a menu based around the art. I'd work with Paul's always been. I mean, he's a friend. He's a good friend and a mentor. But a lot of it was like he was the first guy that I worked for, that I worked with.
Yeah.
I didn't really work for him.
Yeah.
He respected my experience from working at these different French places. I mean, he didn't have that kind of experience,
Yeah.
So, so then V, so we moved. So V opened in 2004, August of 04.
Yeah.
And, we moved out to the suburbs to Hinsdale, which I still live now. And we picked Western Springs really because it was a dry town. And we had met some people. I mean, we were new in the area. We had met people, and they had done this big survey in Western Springs that, what do the residents want? It's like they just want a flipping restaurant with a decent bar, right?
Yeah.
So we were the first restaurant in Western Springs since Prohibition to serve booze.
That's
crazy.
Other than I mean, now it's a Mariano's, but there was a Dominic's out there that had a package license.
Well, first of all, for people that might be listening and aren't familiar with like the Chicagoland area, Western Springs and Hinsdale lies. Is it just west or is it southwest?
It's a little southwest.
Southwest
right?
of the city of Chicago,
Yep.
like 20, 30 minutes, depending.
Yeah, half an hour, depending on the traffic.
Yeah.
It's kind of between 290,
290,
the
yeah.
Eisenhower, and 55.
Got it. Okay.
So it is southwest.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we opened with this, talking about contemporary American food. I mean, when you're opening a restaurant, everybody wants to know what kind of food you're doing. And, I've kind of struggled with that for years because it's like, it's a lot easier if it's like it's an Italian restaurant,
Yeah.
Korean restaurant,
Yeah.
But that's, for me, it was very Western European influenced, seasonal American food,
Yeah.
I mean, and when I say American, it's just because it's just kind of a melting pot of different influences and
Right.
cultures. But heavy on buying locally with a large emphasis on preservation.
Love that.
And again, this goes back to my time in New York, but really trying to use and incorporate pickles and agri-dews and fermented things. I mean, we weren't doing we weren't doing a ton of fermentation yet then,
Yeah.
but we were doing some. But how you incorporate that in food, right? Making butter sauces out of pickled fennel, turning pickled fennel into vinaigrette, like that kind of stuff, like reduction sauces with blueberry agri-dew, like sweet and sour blueberries, reduce the liquid, add whatever kind of stock or not, and then finish it with butter, add the blueberries back into it, a nice accompaniment for a wood grilled,
Sounds
duck breast or
delicious.
pork chop. But so, I think even still now, I mean, our menu is different now than it was then. I mean, because we were an a la carte restaurant forever, along with the tasting menu. But now, last summer we switched to a prefix menu.
Oh, 100%.
100% different,
Yeah.
and it's I mean, we still have like sort of the V classics a la carte charcuterie plate stuff we make in house, cheese plate, burger, salad, that kind of stuff. But now it's three savory courses, three choices in each. The food is, I mean, it'll be 18 years that I've had the restaurant.
It's incredible.
And you look at all the different things that we've done. I really do like the focus of the restaurant now. Not to say that some of the food that we did in the past wasn't focused. It was just a little more complex.
Yeah.
And I think when you're charging $60 a person, 3 courses, you kind of have to tighten it up a little bit.
That's not a lot.
But you can do that in a way that is, I would describe it as being focused, right? Like you can curate some great wine pairings. Like we now have a sommelier. We never had a sommelier.
Oh, cool.
always wanted to have that, right? So, Grace, who does both V and Vistro Prime, it's been really fun to see that. But we have one of our second course options right now is a Toulouse sausage that we would grill, served over some red quinoa that's kind of creamed out. And then we have like a mojo de ajo, like the slow cooked garlic and olive oil, but with green garlic on the top of the sausage. That's it. That's the dish.
Yeah.
The mojo, the sausage, and the quinoa. But that's kind of like Everest stuff, just really focused,
I love that.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, so we opened, it's been a long time. 8 years.
18.
18 years. 8 years. 8 years. 18 years.
18 years.
That is crazy.
Yeah. And then, I remember, we were the first bar, but God, man, we had our first round of bartenders were terrible.
Right.
That was, the big cocktail push in the United States was not happening in 2004.
Right.
So, I don't even know what the opening cocktail menu was, but we had one of my favorite. If you guys ever come out to Hinsdale, I'll take you to Page's little mom and pop joint for breakfast or lunch. But the original owner's son, Mike Page, I would go in there with my son when we first moved to Hinsdale, and I'd watch Mike work. He was the son of restaurant owners, right? So it was kind of fun to watch him work. But he's hustling. He took orders. He'd be back on the griddle. He could do anything.
Yeah.
And I knew he worked at a shot and beer place in Brookfield, and I'm like, you ever want to bartend?
Yeah.
And he started bartending at V, and that was when we started. It was around that. Well, it was before that he started, but when I was writing my book, it was a whole chapter in there about cocktails and how to incorporate all the preserved stuff in there. But he was a big part of that.
That's cool.
But just funny. It's just crazy to see the evolution of a place like that.
Yeah.
I can't believe that town didn't have
Liquor.
It's like
You looked a little distraught when I said that.
I'm just confused how that's possible.
Well, Evanston was dry too. It's one of the last cities to.
For how long? Till when?
I don't know. I don't know about 2004 though.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
2004 is not
so
too long ago.
Evanston, Oak Park, Hinsdale,
yeah,
Western Springs. These places were dry forever,
that's crazy.
for decades.
That's crazy.
Why?
So even now, I don't know about Hinsdale and Western Springs, but I know in Evanston, you buy booze at a bar, the tax there, they make you pay for it. It's there's a little bit of a higher tax on that alcohol.
There's a higher tax on everything in Evanston.
That's okay. Well, there you go.
Is that what's going
They're
on?
brutal. Property taxes are insane there.
Yeah.
That's their thing.
That's Chicago though. Property taxes.
And Vistro Prime has been going around for how long now?
So we opened. I had Perennial Virant with the Boca guys. We opened in 2011 when I worked with Joe Frillman. Actually, I should give some. We talk about. I have my shout out for the end of the show.
Yes, you do.
But can I do some?
You can shout out
some small shout outs.
Yeah, let's do it.
The whole show.
So the original crew at Perennial is Carlo LaMagna, who's got Magna Cucina in Portland, Oregon. Awesome restaurant. Just got Food and Wine Best New Chef.
Oh, cool.
And a nomination for a Beard Award. Wow. He's going to be in Chicago. Used to work for me.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's a Filipino restaurant. Super talented.
How did we not?
Cody Cheatham, one of the original guys, is at Tavernita in Denver. Mm-hmm. That's the Frasca Food and Wine guys. What's his name? Stuckey, the wine guy. Anyway, he's out there.
Yeah, Bobby Stuckey.
Thank you. James Beard, Nam.
Yeah.
He's coming into Chicago. And then Joe Frillman,
Right.
super talented guy, local guy.
Yeah.
Daisy's, I heard they're expanding.
Yeah.
don't know if
Love
that's word on
Daisies.
the street. Yeah.
Yes. I don't know.
We should tell everyone.
I don't know if he's announcing it, but
Yeah, maybe not. And then Ed Sura, who's with the Carbone group now in Miami. But we had an amazing.
Wow.
that's a
And then this
talented
guy
squad.
Keith Potter, who is now in where's Keith? But he was in the Big Sur for a while. We were running a resort. So really talented guys over there. Wow, it's pretty cool. But yeah, so I did that project with the Boca guys, and was super proud of that restaurant, the staff. I mean, everybody was so, it was the perfect fit for me because I was like kind of a poster child for the Green City Market and buying locally and that, and the restaurant was right across from the market.
yeah.
And what I also liked about the project is that we were part of a hotel. We opened the rooftop, the J. Parker. So we had to design that menu, which was a 36-inch griddle and 2 fryers was the kitchen.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like, what are you going to serve there, right?
Yeah.
Shin ramen.
Yes.
Flapjacks and shit.
I had a couple of buddies that were part of the opening of that J. Parker, and just,
Oh, really?
just hearing the madness. No, on the front side.
On the front side.
Yeah, bartenders.
What names?
Kara is now the general manager over at
Kara
Kasama,
okay.
and then Tony Selna owns Spilt Milk and Little Victories.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, Tony. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
they-
but it was cool. And then we had Elaine's, the
the coffee
coffee
shop.
shop. So it's just fun to get involved with different types of food service,
Yeah.
right? Unfortunately, we didn't. We stayed open and we closed in 2016. So it was a 5.5 year run, and that's one of those like I enjoyed working with both with Kevin and Rob from the Boca Group, but we were just not always, and they would admit this too. I mean, we have admitted it, but we just were not always aligned with ultimately what
your
sort of
philosophies.
goals or our mission was. I look back on it. We were part of a hotel. I refused to serve, or to buy like fresh fruit, like berries and stuff like that from California in January.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to do that. Let's make some cool like dried fruit compotes. We can get some dried fruit from Seedling, or let's get some frozen fruit from Klug Farm. And
Yeah.
but back to what I was saying before, it's like you got to give the customers what you want. Like if you're in a hotel,
Yeah.
right? Like if people want avocado toast and that kind of stuff, like
Yeah.
You got to do it.
you got to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was still in that kind of mindset. Where it's like, no, we're representing the Upper Midwest, and we're buying from these farmers, and that's what we do.
Yeah.
Whole animals, all that kind of stuff. And the other thing too is it's a ton of labor
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
As labor has gone up, you got to be smarter about stuff.
I was gonna ask that, like this philosophy of buying, all these local farm produce, and I mean, it comes at a price,
Yeah.
and there's this trade off. You get this incredible product, you get to do something, great for a local family owned, business, and you get to support. But how did you manage that on your menu and your food, and it's so much easier to go the other way and
Right.
stay profitable.
right.
And not even profitable sometimes, just
Well, right.
above the,
To
being in
survive.
black. Just like, how did you manage that for all this time? Like,
Yeah, I mean, it was difficult, and it was expensive, and we even work with some farmers that, these farmers, they were scraping by. So we would front them money in the beginning of the year.
Oh, wow.
And then we would, each invoice we would pay for. I forget how we did it, but half the invoice when they came, and have kind of a work off credit over the course of the year.
Wow.
I don't know, I mean, I think some of that philosophy, I regret a little bit. I'd be lying if I said I didn't. I love all the relationships that we've had over the years, and and they're still really important to me. But you just want to get asses in the seats, and you gotta make sure that the customers are happy, and you gotta be smart about your labor. I mean, all of my restaurants, even still today, labor continues to be a problem. Yeah. Right. It's trying to, and we've cut back. Yeah. You know, I mean, like we're not as a, you know, now like we have a walk-in cooler upstairs at V, which we didn't have for years. So, you know, we can do like fermented stuff and quick pickled stuff, and you can just have buckets of things up in the walk-in cooler. Right. You know, you want to pickle asparagus, it's a lot less labor than canning all that stuff.
Yeah,
this is true.
You know.
Yeah. So,
I mean, I guess I am proud that I did that. I do think it'd be fun. I mean, who knows where life will take me now that I'll be an empty nester next year. My kids are going to be all out of the house. One of them's going out to California, but you know, it would be fun to cook in a place like California,
right, where everything's on your back.
Because then it's a little easier.
Yeah,
that's true. Know? Yeah, with the produce.
I mean, when we first opened V in 2004, it was a challenge getting stuff, and we fought through it, and that's why we did a lot of preserving, so we could accent the menu with summer produce and that kind of stuff. But like I remember this guy Bill Dugan up in Wisconsin, who was like the spinach guy, and he would grow overwintered spinach all year without any supplemental heat, so just in polytunnels, and he would, you know, they in the inside of the hoop house, they put like live compost in there, so that kind of generates heat to heat it up, and then hopefully you get a little bit of sunshine, and those, you know, often at nighttime the plants will not die, but it'll get worked over from the frost, and then you get a little sunshine, and if the hoop house can heat up to 55, right? They pop back up, and the spinach just gets sweeter and better.
Oh, that's cool.
And Rick Bayless had like the main line on that spinach. Like nobody could buy spinach from this guy because all the spinach went to Rick.
Yeah.
And I remember it was like, it may have been that winter of 2005. It may have been like 2006 winter.
Yeah.
When Bill's like, I can sell you 15 pounds a week. You know, I'm like, yes, you know. Yeah. But it was like, $12 a pound spinach.
Yeah.
In 2006.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So you know.
Yeah.
It's a trade-off. Well, it's a trade-off, right?
Yeah.
Anyway.
That's crazy.
Well, maybe indoor farming will change things like that, right?
Yeah.
You know, and then we're seeing that a lot, and hopefully there's a big push towards that. So yeah, we've been meeting with a lot of interesting younger generation of people that are trying to like do, and then you're seeing like the vertical farms in the Midwest with some incredible stuff like Mighty Vine tomatoes and
right
4-star
mushrooms, which we serve at our restaurant, and now there's now there's just like a whole, I feel like, movement towards that. So it's really cool to see.
Awesome to see that kind of stuff, you know.
I want to jump to Gaijin. Real quick.
I love talking about that.
I gotta ask, like, how did this whole thing start?
Yeah, they so Gaijin or Gaijin, you know, you can pronounce it either way from what I understand as a Gaijin. You know, so my wife, you know, she's a doctor. She still practices, but she studied Japanese at Duke.
Okay.
And she lived near Osaka for a semester when she was in college. And when her and I were dating, when I was still working at Trotter's, she, you know, trying to impress me, you know, maybe she knows something, maybe she knows some food that I don't know, right?
Yeah.
And she's like, you know, have you ever had or heard of okonomiyaki? And I'm like, you know, I couldn't even say it. So that's where it started. You know, the start of it was like, you know, and she kind of tried to describe it to me, like this savory cabbage pancake thing, and I think I kind of blew it off for a few years, kind of like it all sounded kind of weird to me.
Wait, so she had it? She tasted it somewhere?
Oh yeah, she grew. I mean, not grew up. She lived near Osaka, where okonomiyaki comes from.
Okay.
So that's the birthplace of it.
Oh, I didn't know.
So she lived right near there. So it's a huge part of the food culture in that Kansai area in Japan, and so she loved it, right? And she, and I kind of blew it off, right? Not really. And I remember, and I was never much of a. I mean, even still now, I'm challenged with computers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But so I wasn't a big internet guy, and I think when I first started to kind of look it up on the internet, it was all Japanese that would come up. So it was really hard to figure out what it was. You couldn't figure it out. And then the book The Japanese Kitchen by Hiroko Shimbo came out probably around 2000. And I had gotten a copy of it, and okonomiyaki was in the book.
Yeah.
And I started messing around with it, started making it. And my kids have grown up eating it. They're 20 and almost 18. A lot of our friends and friends' kids have had it, for years. Yeah. And when Perennial closed in 2016, well, I knew it was closing that fall, and I was introduced to my partner Lance, who worked at McDonald's for forever, and he was leaving there and was interested in doing something cool, and our mutual friends knew about this okonomiyaki concept that we were kind of percolating, right? And we actually, I mean, and they, well, if they listen to this, they'll know it now. But when we were opening the J. Parker, because we just had the griddle and the fryer. I mean, first thing I thought about was like, we should just do okonomiyaki. Yeah. And I was going to pitch that whole idea to Rob and Kevin, which they wouldn't have wanted to do anyway. That's fine. I mean, it's a rooftop bar. Like it's not the right fit for that, right? Yeah. So,
how would you describe okonomiyaki to like people that have never seen, heard, or tasted this?
Yeah.
Because I feel like it is a hard thing to explain. I think
So okonomi means have it your way or how you like it, and yaki is griddled, right? So it's this customizable cabbage pancake, savory, that you can customize. You can add different things to it. You can add. I mean, the Japanese lean pretty heavy into seafood, oysters, scallops, shrimp, pork, and it's and there's two styles, right? There's the Osaka style, which is the original style. Everything's all mixed together, shredded cabbage, wheat flour, nagaimo, which is like this mountain yam that you grate into it, and water or dashi, pickled ginger, tempura flakes, and then you have this mixture, and then you just spoon that on a griddle and you cook it like a pancake. It's a little thicker. It's not, and I think because of the ratios of the different ingredients, I would describe okonomiyaki between cake like pancake texture and custard. It's not custard and it's not an American pancake, right? Yeah. It's in the middle. Yeah. Which is interesting. And listen, not everybody likes that. I mean, I think most people, when they have it, they're like, holy shit, like, what is this? Like, this is crazy. Like, I've never had anything like it, but it's approachable. Like, cause okonomiyaki is typically garnished with okonomiyaki sauce, which is, the sauce we use is basically 15 different fruits and vegetables. Made by Otafuku, which is the company in Hiroshima. They're one of two largest producers of okonomiyaki sauce in Japan. Yeah. So that sauce is kind of sweet and savory, and then in Kewpie mayo and some seaweed and bonito flakes, right? So it's all. I had a point about the flavor, but it's a when I first had it, which would be stuff that I made, So, I'm like, is this right? Cause I never, but it didn't make me think of Japanese food. Like it seemed like something that was like, very approachable, and you can kind of do it with a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And that's the genius behind it, because you can, right? It's like this approachable, and it's customizable. It's like how you like it, Andy. Do you like chicken in there, like udon noodles, or
It's like a Japanese like pizza or something like that. Where you
Yes.
build your own, customize it.
Yep,
Yeah.
and they often describe it as pizza,
Oh, interesting.
And then the Hiroshima style is similar ingredients, but just layered with the addition of the yakisoba noodles, the stir fry noodle. And we have both styles, but so 2016 was like, let's do it, let's do the Japanese, let's do the okonomiyaki restaurant.
Yeah.
And at that point, I had never traveled over there, so my wife and I, and now our partner Lance, also went on a quick trip. Because it's like, if we're gonna open up an okonomiyaki restaurant,
You got to try it.
might be a good idea to go over to Japan, right? As a white guy, right?
where was the spot that that was like, this is incredible? Like,
Well, on that trip.
yeah.
Well, that was a crazy trip, because it was a 5-day trip,
Oh wow.
which, I would never,
Lot of okonomiyaki.
never recommend that far to travel for
Yeah.
just that amount of time.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the name of the place, but it was near where we were staying in Tokyo. We went into Tokyo first, and we went to this little place, and they had the griddles or the teppans on each table.
Yeah.
I think that place had the option where, customers could cook their own.
Oh, okay.
Which we don't do that. But I do have some Japanese people, or people that have traveled there enough, to ask about that. Like, hey, we make our own here,
Yeah.
kind of thing. But I think probably my favorite initial okonomiyaki experience was at a place called Mizuno in Osaka, in the Donburi area, where there's just a ton of street food, like the takoyaki, like the octopus balls and stuff. So you walk through there, and this place was, and the other thing that was cool about this place too is their griddle, or their teppan was all custom stuff. Like, it was like a curved griddle.
Oh,
like it kind of went along with the counter.
Oh, wow.
I mean, all small places. This place has got a couple levels, but there's probably, a dozen seats on each floor, and you're waiting outside to get in.
Wow.
So that's how it all came to, we were like, let's do it. And
And why the name Gaijin?
well,
For people that don't know the word.
so Gaijin means outsider or foreigner, right? And as Gaijins, we want to be as authentic as we know, right? We've traveled there, we've tasted it. We're still Gaijins. We want to be respectful to the Japanese, to the culture, but we're clearly Gaijins. Like my partner Lance is black,
Yeah.
white guy. So black guy and a white guy
Making Japanese food.
making Japanese food. Though Lance doesn't make the Japanese food,
Yeah.
but he can. Anyway, so but that's an interesting, Thomas, that's an interesting topic, because obviously that's been something that's come up a
Yeah.
couple of times, right?
Right.
From my understanding and my wife's understanding, and the people, like when I had coffee with Hiroko Shimbo when she was in town before we opened, and she's become kind of a mentor for me, and was telling her, I was like, here's the name we're thinking about, you want to make, because she's an older lady, and she's lived in the United States for a long time, and she laughed. She kind of giggled when I
Yeah.
said the name.
Yeah.
So my understanding is that, if you're, if you're Japanese and you move away, right?
Right.
Morimoto is a gaijin now.
Right.
Nobu, I mean, they're all gaijins. If you leave the mother country,
Yeah.
you're now a gaijin, and that's just the way it is, And
Right.
if you're, the few people, like, there's been, like, I remember this one guy, this customer who, like, taught English over. He's a white guy, taught English over in Japan. And he was like, if I find it kind of offensive, like the name Gaijin, he's like, I lived there for 2 years. I taught English. It's like, I was a Gaijin.
He's official. He's
It's
officially,
like maybe you were a stroke, right? Like if I go to Mexico, right? If I
Yeah.
move to Mexico,
right.
I'm gonna be a gringo.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be an outsider.
Right.
I like you gotta integrate yourself into a new culture. I mean, ultimately, hopefully, people would like you and say, Thomas, we're happy you live in Mexico or wherever it is, right?
Yeah.
But you're going to be an outsider for a while, and that's just the way it is. So, like, this guy that was like, I find that offensive. It's like, I mean, maybe you need to look at yourself in the mirror. Like maybe you were,
Yeah. No, for sure. I
So-
mean, it's
so
the same
that-
it's the same for us in Korean culture. Like we're not considered Koreans back home. There's a term for us too.
Oh yeah, what's that term again?
Kyopos.
Kyopo.
Got it.
So it's like
Now,
or
and,
American, pretty
Got
much, or foreigner, outsider.
and does that because so the other so here's an example, and I was sensitive to this. One of our reps who works for a Japanese company is Korean, but grew up in Tokyo.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And she was definitely like our first meeting. She was like, "Why'd you call it Gaijin?"
Yeah.
Right. And and I could kind of see like somebody like that where it'd be a little sensitive, So
Yeah, and that's
I just I was just like, listen, I'm not trying to offend anybody. I just we're
I think it's no different than like I'm sure people from Korea like we get business travelers from some South Korea, they're here for a conference and they come into this restaurant, our restaurant, Perilla, and they're just like, oh, this is cute, like these kyopos that aren't, and they're cooking our food and they're, and it's just I'm sure it's just it's the same kind of process
Right,
and thinking,
right.
But at the end of the day, it's like as long as you're paying respect to and putting in good quality work, right? I mean, and you're doing the food ultimately at the end of the day justice and it tastes delicious, like that's all that matters,
Right.
So
Nowadays, everyone's fucking sensitive about everything. So, what can you do? I remember one of our guys.
it's true story.
So this Korean dude came up to me, and he's like, "Hey, the Kimchi Kids podcast." I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "It's a little offensive."
what?
Like, what are you talking about? Like, in what way? He's like, "Well, you're kind of taking advantage, or you're what do you call it? Appropriating the culture." I'm like, I am the culture. Like, I don't know if you can tell. Like, it's okay. Trust me.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's even that.
Right,
Even something as like, no, kimchi. I smell like kimchi. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, it's
Right,
okay.
right.
Trust me. But even he was offended. So
Well, I love the space. I've been to Gaijin. Angelina and I went there for lunch one day, and I love the space. I love where you're located too. I know it's like a little bit challenging, maybe visibly being on like right behind that
Right.
station, but
Right.
I love it's like Lake and what is that Lake and
Morgan.
Morgan.
it's a very happening corner over there,
Yeah.
first of all.
Yeah.
And I remember our experience. Like we went in there, the space is like it's a beautiful space. It's like there's a lot of thought put into that. The design and everything just felt really cool. Like you can see that you guys are like, paying tribute to what you're doing,
Right.
There's a respect there. And I remember actually seeing you there, but you guys were doing like a staff meeting, and I just remember saying like, "Oh, it's cool." I'm like, "It's cool that chef's here. Like he's running the show here, And there was like a camaraderie amongst your staff there that was really
It's
cool
awesome
to see.
hear, Thomas.
And the food was delicious. and you guys have an incredible business or like a lunch menu there. That
A lunch special.
Lunch
with
special.
The yakisoba and the
Yes.
mochi donuts and
it's those donuts were fucking delicious. Yeah,
mochi donuts.
yeah.
yeah.
So good.
And there's just like the West Loop needs lunch. Like it needs needs more lunch spots. And
Right. On the inexpensive side or
Right.
less expensive
Yeah.
than
then some of these other places that in that same cuisine arena can be quite expensive over there. So it was really cool to see that you guys are doing
it's
that.
awesome. Yeah, and I love, again, talking about this and thank you for having been there. You been there, Andy?
Not yet. But I've eaten from there. We actually have.
Damn you.
Have you been to Perilla?
Oh, there you go.
I haven't. And you guys have been open longer. Sorry. You got me there.
I think we're.
well,
about the
you know
same
I'm
time.
coming now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, please do. We'd love to have you.
Anyway, but I was just gonna say I like what I love about the okonomiyaki concept, or one thing I've learned about Japanese food, and and I think it applies to any culture, but there's just they have in Japan, you go have gyoza at a gyoza restaurant.
Yeah.
You have sushi at this restaurant. You have okonomiyaki here. You have ramen here. You have udon here. And I really like the focus. And we were talking about menu focus.
Yeah.
Not always feeling like you had to change stuff all the time. And I really like that. Like you can really dial stuff in.
Yeah. It's definitely a part of our. I feel like it's part of like East Asian culture. Is like the machi.
chips. Yeah.
It's like even in Koreatown in Los Angeles, like when we go talk about like the best like Chinatowns and Koreatowns and all that stuff, right? It's like same thing. It's like you go to this is like the dim sum spot for Chinese food. Like you go to Koreatown in LA, you're like this is the bone broth soup restaurant. Like that's all they have. It's like 6 different versions of that bone broth. So, but that's really cool, and I'm just super excited to see it because I'm a huge fan of okonomiyaki, and so I remember. Just being super stoked about hearing that you're doing this because it's delicious. Some people need to go and try it out.
Appreciate
Steve Gramajo is what I was going to say.
Steve
You know
Gramajo
Steve?
used to work for you, yeah.
Used to work for you.
that. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. With long hair. Steve. Long hair, Steve.
The perfect bun.
Yeah.
Did he move to Colorado or something?
No, he moved to Perilla.
I've worked with Steve for a long time.
But he brings us. I don't know if
Wait,
you
but
know.
Steve he worked
us
front of
open.
the house. Front of the
Yeah,
house.
he's
Yeah,
front of
front of
house.
house.
Front of house. Yeah.
yeah.
Incredible.
Wasn't he dating one of our?
Yeah, there was a whole thing.
Oh, and then they
There's a thing,
because I
yeah.
thought they moved out to Denver.
No, I think that was like a Peace Corps kind of situation.
That's funny. That's funny.
Any advice? I just want to jump in here because you've had this incredible, career, and like just hearing about your story today and just like the journey you've had. I mean, from outside of St. Louis and full circle, not like to what you've created here in the Chicagoland area.
Hillbilly to Gaijin.
To Gaijin. You've amassed quite a bit of knowledge and experience over your life. What is some advice you'd love to share with young cooks out there?
I think staying humble is one of the most important things.
Love that.
Just having hopefully, to get to the point where you feel like you've accomplished a lot and you've learned a lot and you've acquired the kind of skill set that you need to excel in a professional kitchen. I mean, I remember, it was always like, you're pushing yourself to get stuff done, right? You got to prep lists and set up your mise en place, and you got to set up your station. So you kind of broke down your day, right? Like first part of the day is like getting stuff, your pans, your tools, and then
gathering,
and then you're getting after it. And I remember there was a point where at some point stuff was, it was done right. It was not too salty. It was, it was cooked properly. And that was when you were finally, because before it'd be like you're hustling, right? And maybe like the gratin was like, the cream that you're heating up for that, you put too much salt in that. And, you can't fix that, right? Yeah. But like over time, you get better, hopefully, right? I mean, at the end of the day,
Sometimes.
at the end of the day, it is a technical skill,
Right.
Right. So but when you get to that point, stay humble, right? Like when you get to that point, I mean, you're gonna want to pass on advice and teach other people. Stay humble.
I love
You
that.
know.
And what's a piece of advice that you feel like should be ignored by some people, by the youth?
Should be ignored
Should be ignored.
by the youth.
The next
Seems
generation.
like a hard question.
This is always our stumper.
Yeah, I'm stumped. Yeah, I mean, I think probably. So maybe I'm not phrasing the answer properly, but you need to be patient.
Yeah.
You need to have patience, right? So, so I guess to back it up to the question, right? Like what should advice from a younger generation? What should we ignor from them? Right?
No. What? Like, I guess like what advice is like over?
Help me out
like,
here, Chuck.
Yeah.
You're laughing.
We've had several discussions
Yeah.
about the challenge of this question, so I'm just enjoying the struggle.
Yeah, the lack of patience.
Yeah.
The lack of like just it's gonna take longer.
Yeah.
It's gonna take longer.
Yeah.
So you got to be patient. So I think the so what I would ignore would be the feeling like at my restaurant Vistro Prime, like this guy TJ, who's now getting promoted this week to be a sous chef.
Congrats, TJ.
It's great, but like
Fucking did
like he had been there about and we just reconcepted, so we just had a year mark, right? Wow. So it's for me, it's like it's a new restaurant, right?
Yeah.
He had been there, for the most part, most of the time. And I remember at one point, after about 3 or 4 months, I was in the kitchen. I was talking to him, like, how things going? And he's like, he's like, what? He's like, I'd love to sit down with you at some point in time and talk about, kind of how you got to where you are now, and and like, and I don't, I try to acknowledge the needs of my staff, but like I'm busy. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm like, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And it never happened.
Right.
It never happened. And
Yeah.
I just brought it up to him last week.
Yeah.
And I was like, TJ, do you remember that conversation we had? He was like, oh yeah. I was like, I do too.
Yeah.
I was like, here it is. Like you put your head down, you're working, and now you're getting this other opportunity, right?
Yeah.
But it wasn't the right time for that. It's like what I really need him to do. It's like, I don't have time to sit down and tell him, tell him how I got
life
there,
story.
right? So that's what I would say.
Yeah.
Patience.
Just be patient.
Yeah, it's like ignoring.
How'd I do, Chuck, on that?
It's
answer?
pretty good. It's
Good
pretty
answer?
good. It's a little backwards, but I liked it. It's like you have to ignore the urge to be like an instant success. I
Right.
think that's like
Yeah, the
that's
pressures-
the thing. Everyone like you look at social media, you see these 1 in a million
Right.
meteor rises and these things, and it's like even if you are that person, you're still just gonna get there. And then what do you have? You have the process, you have yourself, and you have to enjoy it.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And then like George Harrison, right? Like I always felt like he had kind of like, just watching that documentary with the
Yeah.
Beatles when they did Let It Be, the last album, and just the whole interaction between him and McCartney. I felt like McCartney was always pushing him to like George, who was my personal favorite of the Beatles. I felt like he wasn't always happy with what he was doing as a guitarist, right? Like his good buddy was Eric Clapton, who was everybody was like, oh, Eric Clapton, and
For sure.
and I think Paul even referenced like, hey, like can't you play that like Eric Clapton, like Eric, I don't know if did you watch that?
I didn't watch it yet.
It's crazy.
It's on my list for sure.
It's crazy. It's like
that's a crazy crew, but that's the same thing. It's like you got all these people that have so much talent and have so much direction, and it's also with music. It's very much like you guys were talking about. Sometimes you just gotta bust out the thing that everyone wants.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
music is very much like that too, and it's kind of
Right.
like
Yeah.
there's making a hit song, which is like generally intentional. It's generally like, yeah, we're going to use these seasonal things. We're going to use these like current production trends and current, chord progressions that are popular. We're going to use those, and we're going to get attention, and that's going to be the thing. And then there's the album cuts, which is like I'm going to combine this and this and this and this, and isn't this interesting?
Right.
And those might be the hit, but sometimes you got to just,
I always like the deep cuts on the drive.
oh yeah. It's nice when radio veers out of like the 500
Right.
songs they play.
Yeah.
Any favorite restaurants and shout outs that you wanna throw in?
Well, it's on the top of my mind. Well, I was just this past weekend. I was just down in Nashville.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it was for a 50th birthday party for one of our friends. So there was not, the eating was not really the focus for the weekend.
Yeah.
And I'm dying to go back there and really and dig into the food scene down there. There were a handful of spots that I wanted to check out. But
Yeah.
place
Nashville's blowing up.
called Locust. That sounds super cool.
Locust.
Locust.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, Sean Brock's place
Right,
down there.
Husk.
Yeah. Well, not Husk anymore. I think it's in the Aubrey Hotel.
Oh.
But my chef from Vistro Prime was there.
Oh, cool.
But also top of my mind was my partner Lance was in Montreal. And maybe one of my favorite meals of all time is Joe Beef in Montreal. One of my
Been
favorite
trying to get
restaurants.
there for a long
Yeah.
time.
You need to make that happen.
Yeah,
Thomas.
we should.
I know.
knows?
I emailed them once, like 6 months out, and still didn't make it happen. But one day.
Yeah. No, I don't. Yeah, I love Avec. I mean, we have such a great food scene.
Yeah.
I need to come to your guys' place.
Yeah,
I
please
apologize
do.
for not
No.
doing it.
It's your
Living
Bring the family.
living in
before he
Hins-
goes out to California.
Yeah.
Have him come by.
Yeah, living in Hinsdale is a little bit of a problem for eating in the city.
Yeah.
and having kids too.
Yeah. Just,
That's also
That's
why
why you got to open your own restaurant out there, I guess.
Yeah. No, for sure. I haven't. I also am sorry, Mr. Virant. I haven't been a V either. I know it's only been
the
18
reverse
years,
commute.
but yeah.
Well, I'd love to have you guys come out.
Yeah, I mean, it's been literally on the top of my list. It's just I don't get out to Western Springs
Yeah.
much. But yeah, I know it's been somewhere I've wanted to go. It's everyone talks about. I used to work with Chef Chris Pendel for a long time.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, he obviously.
Oh, yeah. Chris, he
speaks very
just
highly
did
of you.
he just did our anniversary dinner at Vistro Prime.
Oh, did he?
So he came out and he did a pasta dish and the Wellington like they do at Smith
Yeah.
and Sons.
Oh, cool.
Awesome.
So
awesome.
he's a good guy.
That was
Yeah.
for your 1 year.
Yeah,
anniversary?
one year
Oh,
anniversary.
Man, we should do some cool shit.
that is cool.
Yeah, it was cool.
Well, I it's been an incredible opportunity, I think, for the two of us to hear
Likewise.
from you, and just it sounds like it's been an incredible journey that you've been on. And the people, like at the end of the day, like when I'm walking away from this, is just like you've been constantly pursuing to challenge yourself, to kind of not completely just cave into what maybe the common and popular demand is, and just like sticking true to who you are and your food and your cuisine, and also just like constantly challenging yourself as well, and like exploring. And I feel like that's the thing I'm taking away from this, and that if anything, for younger listeners out there that are in kitchens or just in business, just like the idea of challenging and themselves and being explorers in their field. So it's been an absolute incredible pleasure having this conversation with you. So thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks, Thomas.
Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Virant.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.